Hello, welcome back to All for United WFC. We have another signing over the line. It's been a busy few weeks on this channel and at United, getting these player profiles out for you. But we said we'd do them, so we thought we'd stick to that. So I've got Abdullah with me to talk all through Melvine Malard on this loan signing. We obviously had a loan signing last season from France as well. Obviously, Cascarino came across in the winter window, so it's something we're seeing a little bit more, so we'll see how that one develops. But I won't waste any more time on this one. Obviously, a bit of a surprise. I feel this one kind of came out of nowhere on the night of deadline day. Obviously, at the time of recording this, it still is deadline day for us, but we'll pass over that one. But what's your thoughts on the signing overall? Because it's a bit of a surprise, this one.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I like it in the sense that I think Mallard needed a loan. I mean, after seeing her last season, the players that are there right now, obviously Diani's come in and that she'll take up a lot of minutes at Lyon. That I think Mallard needed a season of just consistent minutes. And when United needed a forward and she gets linked initially, my first impression was, okay, I don't hate this, because I think she's a good enough player to be able to play in a little bit more of a physical league, and I just think she has so much potential, because her first season, the breakthrough season at Lyon, was fantastic. So coming into United side, you've got Ella Toon there, still around, and then there is this mix of players that I think she can link up with really, really well, and I do feel like there is a position for her at United.
Caught me on another tab now. I'll get to the next thing. But obviously, off the back of that, then, what would you, for people who maybe haven't seen her or not aware of her, what would you kind of say her best position is? We'll start with that one first. In terms of, we know she's a forward. Obviously, she's coming in. We've signed a couple of forwards already. What would you say her best position is?
So Melvine Malard can kind of play across the front line. You can play her across as a winger on either side. You can play her as a striker, right? So I think her best position is probably off the left, coming inside. She can do that really well. She's played on the right, hasn't too badly. She's played up front, so in a way, you can kind of play her across, and she's good. She's better in the wide areas, kind of coming inside and playing in those half spaces, combining with the striker and probably the overlapping fullbacks. Is probably where she will most do her job well. But she is someone that can play in a more advanced position as a striker, and someone who will want to drop in as like going forward, link up with Ella Toon. I think I would assume that someone like Ella Toon would really enjoy playing with her, just because of the interchangeability of play, and just being able to kind of play around players that are very good in the pockets. I mean, Leah Galton's also another one to look at. And in terms of if she plays as a striker, then you could really play Ella Toon, Leah Galton, and whoever you kind of want on the right hand side. And Nikita Paris, for example, and kind of go from there. So I feel like what the biggest thing is more than her best position, which is probably in the wide areas. She just kind of gives United a lot of options to change up tactically and really give them a difference in whatever lineup she kind of ends up in.
You've opened up so many questions now. I don't know which question to lead in with now, because you've opened up so many off the back of that. I think I'll go with this one, actually. Obviously, you mentioned at the start of this in terms of it being a good move for her. Obviously, hopefully get some minutes. Do you think she would have accepted this loan if there wasn't the guarantee of minutes? Something that United get criticised a lot for is the lack of rotation. We saw a pretty set 11 last season. The right-hand side was probably the right wing position was the only position that was kind of changeable with Paris, Garcia, Thomas. It was saw a few players out there. Do you think she would have taken this if she wasn't guaranteed to start, or do you think that she would come in and would play maybe a rotation role either off the right or down the middle or off the left?
I think she would have been given some assurances over a set number of minutes, but I think she knows that if she is to match the number of minutes that she is looking to get, I think she knows she has to she has to fight for her place, because if at Lyon she's not guaranteed the minutes, I don't see how at United she would be given the same. I think there is some element of her being told, okay, look, there is a scope for you to play more minutes at United than at Lyon right now, and Lyon would not have accepted the loan if it wasn't for that, because usually when Lyon send players on loan, which they don't really do that often, but when they do from one of their first team players, it is for minutes, and Mallard is probably one of those where they want to see her develop. They probably want to. I mean, they wouldn't have given her a long-term contract if they didn't. So I would hate to see her being wasted here in at United if she isn't playing. But no, I think giving United the depth. You've obviously got the potential Champions League group stages coming up. You've obviously got the domestic cups and the WSL where United want to push. So I think having the quality of like Paris, Garcia, and Mallard, for example, Leah Golton on the left. So when you got these 4 or 5 players there, I think depth becomes important, and I think there should be enough games for her to be able to come in. And if she plays to her potential, I don't see how she gets dropped in any facet from any position that she plays in.
I think that's going to be the interesting thing for me, obviously, when we're talking about our front line. Obviously, Golton, Jason, obviously, is somebody we spent a lot of money on from Barcelona this summer. She is going to be starting because we've paid, a lot of money for her, so she has to be starting. And obviously, you throw her in as well. It's like it's an interesting front line. I just think she wouldn't accept, and as you said, that Lyon wouldn't accept it if there wasn't that guarantee, because it just makes no sense for either party to do a loan. But I will caveat that United have done this in the past. The player name has slipped, like Cascarino actually, literally came in on loan, hardly saw her, and went back, and it was like very strange. So it'll be interesting to see how many minutes she does get.
Yeah.
It's certainly an exciting player in terms of quality. Going back to that, then obviously talking about her attributes, you mentioned a few of them in after the second question. Now, what would you kind of say her standout kind of attributes are on the pitch?
Ooh, question. I think there's a couple. I think she's got. I think she's got really good close control dribbling. And I say that while we may see a lot of a few dispossessions here and there, but I think typically her best move is that when she cuts in inside, that close control, run past drive past the first second player, and then take that shot. I think in that sequence for me is probably where she's best at. She's got very decent off the ball running. I think there's a lot of times when she starts drifting out into the wide areas and goes into the half spaces, she's going to do a lot of these movements that are going to pull players out of positions. She is someone that does want the ball as well as run off it. So you're going to get a can do both. And I know that United have players like Ella Toon, like Leah Golton, Nikita Paris, who want to have the ball. And to some extent, I think she can offset a little bit of that by making these runs in behind. So if anytime, they want to play a combination of JC up front and say Mallard on one wing, you can almost even play as a two striker system, and you have one kind of dropping off the other. So I think her malleability in terms of her versatility and positioning, off the ball running, and probably that close quarter control in the final third, I think is probably where I'd pinpoint her strengths.
You kind of led me on very nicely in terms of the next question. You kind of spoke about this as well at the start when you mentioned Ella Toon, in terms of who you think she's going to link up well with, and who the United players you think she'll kind of suit being around. Because as I mentioned, obviously Jace has started preseason very well, scored against Bayern Munich, scored against Liverpool, looks really, really good. Her and Tooney look to have a good link up between them. Obviously, we've got Garcia and Golton. Lisa Nelson will come into the side, I imagine, this season if she can stay fit. So are those the kind of players you're looking at in terms of who she can link up well with on the pitch there?
Yeah, I mean, you look at when she was playing at Lyon, she linked up well with most of those players. Like it's Salma Basha and Sakina Kershawi when she was there. I think there was some very good combination plays off the left with the fullbacks running in behind and her playing them in. Her combination with Ada Hegerberg was also one to watch, and it was fun when I think she scored, I could be wrong here, but I think 14, 15 goals a couple seasons ago. And there was a game against Haken that they played in the group stages in the Champions League where she made this movement off the left-hand side, and she just created this space for the fullbacks to run behind. So I think players that like playing, interchanging, and kind of coming in off the wings. I think she'll have the best relationship with there, and I'm excited to see her with both Tooney and JC up front. I think those two for me will be very interesting combinations. In terms of how they kind of both complement, contrast, and are very similar in some respects. I know Ella Toon's very direct, likes to pick up the ball and just kind of run forward, and when you've got JC up front as well, who like kind of run off the shoulder, plays in the channels. I think those movements from both those players, and if you put Mallard on one side, I think the combination of the three and the way those three will move, I think will be very, very interesting and very fun. So I'm excited to see how they develop going through the season.
Certainly, you got to be really hyped now for this. In terms of the link, Miyazawa is another player I completely forgot to mention as well. When you're talking about players she could link up with in that front line, obviously we saw what she can do in a very good, obviously Japan side of the World Cup as well. So there's a lot of potential here. I kind of quickly, you touched on the league there in terms of what she's done in the league. What do you kind of think on her? How long you think she's going to need to adapt to the WSL? Because this is a question that usually gets asked when European players or players from abroad come to the WSL, and it's always the same answer. It's always, the WSL is more physical. But that's not taken away from there's also other things as well that players need to adapt to. But I also don't think it's just that anyway. I think it does the other league. Me personally, I think it does the other leagues a disservice, saying that the WSL is the only physical league in Europe. But what are your kind of thoughts on that in terms of the time to adapt to the WSL, and also for people who maybe don't watch the French league, the kind of difference between the two leagues?
I think the French league. I think the difference between the two is interesting. I think both leagues, I think, have their similarities. I do think that the French league, to some extent, can be physical, maybe not to the extent of the WSL, but there are teams that do like to play physical. They do like to be in there. I just think that it comes down to the limitation of teams that are as physical and are as technical to be able to challenge players. I think the middle of the pack can be very, very dangerous. You look at teams like Bordeaux, you could look at teams like Fleury, you look at teams like PSG. Obviously, you look at these teams, and the games can get physical. Yes, Lyon will dominate most games, but some of those teams do like to get into their faces and like to press and like to go there. But having said that, I do think because of the increased level of competition between teams in the WSL, there is more room for her to grow and get used to it. I do think there'll be a little bit of an adaptation period. I do think it'll take a couple of months before we really do see the best Melvine Malard in a United shirt. But I think once she starts getting the link up with the players, she plays a few teams here and there and kind of go. I think there will be. I think we'll start seeing the best, and I think you'll probably initially, if United do get through to the group stages of the Champions League, is probably that's where Mallard initially will really shine, because she's obviously used to playing against European opposition, and that's where she obviously made her name for herself in the Champions League and obviously League One. So I would say there will be a little bit of an adaptation period. Just because I think she is going to be coming to a new culture, new league, and I think she just speaks French. So, I think there will be. But no, I do think while there is a difference, there is enough. There is some physicality and there is some commonality with the French league and the WSL.
My final kind of question then, before I come to the quick fire one at the end, is terms of, do you think there's a potential at the end of this? Obviously, there's always that saying, never fall in love with loan players, because they're obviously leaving, or there's a guaranteed leaving at the end of the term. Do you think there's any possibility at the end of this United could, if it's a successful loan, that United could go in for a permanent one, or do you think she's very, very Lyon tied on this one?
With Melchi de Mornay heading out to Lyon and kind of taking up the minutes and taking up the Melvine Malard role, I can see a universe where if it's a very successful loan, that United go back in for a permanent deal and test and tempt Lyon into selling, because they'll be like, well, look, you've got de Mornay. Obviously de Mornay is coming not to directly replace Caterina Macario, but like there is that sort of, okay, she's one out, one in sort of policy. And I think if they get a too good to refuse offer, I don't see Lyon saying no, and then they can probably go and try and find another French talent, and then they've got a very good academy that they can use. Obviously, Vicky Béchot is going to play a bit more of a prominent role coming up into this season. I think that's another big one. So I think it needs to be a combination of things where Demurne has a fantastic season, Vicky Béchot has an amazing season, and obviously Mallard having a very good season for United, for them to be able to be tempted into selling, because I think sooner rather than later you're going to have Eugénie Le Sommer and Jennifer Marajan retiring or moving on. So there needs to be some succession planning there, because at the same time, if Mallard does really well for United, they can come back and say, well, you know what, this is exactly what we wanted. We want you to come back and continue your good form here. And, if there is some sort of forward planning. So I can see it happening in some universe, but I think the very likely outcome is she goes back to Lyon.
I think a lot of this would potentially depend on Carolyn as well, because obviously there's talk of United going back in for her in January. I think if we get her, I don't think there would be any chance of us going back in, because there just wouldn't be much point, and it would be out of our budget by that. But that United would be a little bit broke by the time we get round to that one if we get Carolyn as well in January. My kind of last quick fire one on this one, in terms of how would you rate this signing out of 10 from a player point of view and also from the club's point of view?
Out of 10, I'll give it a solid. I think from a club point of view, it's a win-win situation. I mean, like, if she does well, she helps you with Champions League experience in her first season, and I would give that like a good 8 out of 10. Because if she doesn't do well, she just goes back to Lyon, right? I think for the player, the rating that comes down to how much she plays. If she plays 15 to 1800 minutes plus. 1,500 minutes plus, I think it's a solid 8 out of 10, because then she gets those minutes in her legs, and she gets to kind of do what she came in to do. She experienced a new league, and I think she goes back as a better player. I think overall, I give it an 8 out of 10, because Mallard develops in one of the most competitive leagues in the world, goes back with all this experience of playing in England, playing at United, playing with players like Ella Toon, Lucia Garcia, Nikita Paris, and kind of gets to develop her game over there, and goes back to Lyon with a newfound versatility in her game, new tools, new weapons. And let's not forget, she probably knows her from a couple of years ago when they were together at Lyon. So at least she's got that familiarity in terms of player there, and I think it'll be good. So I think I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
No, that's pretty solid. I think I'm trying to think of all of the other ratings that we've had at our signings. I don't think anyone's gone above an 8. I don't think anyone's gone below a 7. So 7 or 8 seems to be the feel for a lot of our signings on this one. Abdullah, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to follow you or find any of your stuff that you do, where can people do all of that stuff?
I'm on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it now. It's at KUNABD. So all my stuff's on my profile there. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, make sure you're following it. I'll put the link in the description so it's easier for people to find. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you're liking the video, subscribe, and drop your comments down below as well. Let us know your thoughts on this particular sign. Obviously, listening on Spotify, come and tweet us at allforunitedwfc. Let us know your thoughts on that one, and obviously leave us a rating as well. It's much appreciated. But for now, we shall see you guys in the next one.